a lot. There is a lot going on in there. That is what a co-anchor once said to me on the anchor desk. I'm not sure exactly what I had said to trigger that response. It might have been a weird dream that I had that night. It might have been asking what sort of a hacker could blow out the entire forecasting equipment for all hurricanes because I had a crazy story idea. It might have just been any given ramble of mine at turbo caffeinated Sorboni speed. But anyway, what he did is he listened politely and he looked at me and he nodded, and then that's what he said. There is a lot going on in there. And I laughed and I said, is that a compliment? And he said, that's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's just not what my head is doing right now. And I tell you this story because I love people who have a lot going on in there. And I actually took it as one of the best compliments that I'd ever gotten in my life. Because when you are a big dreamer, an imaginative person, a creative, an artist at heart, basically your brain is always overflowing and spilling out. And when I was at a writing conference about a year ago now, I met an awesome author named Estelle Laure. And I could tell there was a lot going on in there too. So I wanted to invite her on to Find Your Fairy Tale because a ton. I asked her, what are you working on right now? And she said, oh, well, I have 5 books coming out. It's like 5 books. And they are on the way and she is alive and well, even with those 5 books. Hey, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm so great. It's so great to see you. Thank you for making some time for us.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Sorry, this lighting is crazy.
You're glowing. You're just, yes, you're magical. It always takes us a couple minutes to kind of like, we have to fix the angles, we have to fix the light, we have to fix the everything until we get comfortable. But this is how we do things right now because this is how we're hanging out with everybody, right?
Yeah, and I'm not like a fancy anchor woman, so I don't have my home
so you
up.
don't have like the big ring light that I'm
I mean, I do have a ring light. I don't know how to work it. Things are falling in.
The way I do all things is I turn on every button and turn off every button until I get it to work. And that's generally, everybody was like, oh, you're so good with this new like video board that we had. They're like, Sorboni's got the magic touch. I'm like, I just keep hitting buttons. Don't tell them. That's really all I do. But yeah, I mean, I'm so excited to check in with you because when I met you, I was blown away by how much you were juggling. And that's kind of our whole point on Find Your Fairy Tale is to figure out how to juggle all the daily stuff and also achieve the big dreams. So I think right now we've got a little bit of a loading.
Are you there?
So we've got to wait and see if we can get lovely Estelle back. Estelle, if you can hear me now, I'm not sure. I might turn off the connection and turn it back on. And guys, if you're watching now, we've done this before. Basically, it's like rebooting the whole thing. And if you're on your Wi-Fi, Estelle, I would tell you get off your Wi-Fi and then come back on your data because that is usually a little bit easier. Here she is again. Yay. Okay. Take 2. 2, 2, 2. All right. Thank you to our viewers who are saying that you can see her. I couldn't. That's weird. Crow the goose. Thank you. I always feel weird, guys, talking to you by your screen names. I'm sure you have lovely real people names, but I only know you by your fun names. So, hi, Crow the goose. Hello, Michael. Hello, Lisa. Hello, Sheena. All these wonderful people. So here we are. We're connecting again. Estelle says, help. I can have, I know Morgan, who we call my fairy godmother because she is my social media coordinator. She helps fix all of the problems. So I'm sure she'll get her back on in a minute. Hello, Alicia. I have to just, while we're waiting for Estelle to come back, I just have to say how much it means to me to see all of you guys who tune in every week live. I know that I get people, checking it out after the fact, but it's my favorite thing to see the repeat people because now I feel like we have like our whole little Find Your Fairy Tale crew. All right, it says she's unable to join. There we go. Oh, we've got Megasphere says I see and hear both of you. You don't still see her, right? It's just me right now. Like, have I like dropped off? Oh, she's back? How can I not see her? Are you guys seeing her right now? This is happening right now? I can't see her. This is crazy. Oh my goodness. Okay. View request. Here she is. Let me see. Go live. This is crazy. This is like the weirdest piece of, this will be the strangest technology gaffe that we've had yet, if you can see her. Hi.
Oh my God, that was so stressful.
This has happened. Okay. This has happened on my end, not like the guest's end where I've gotten dumped off 1,000 times. So now you're back, and now we're going, yeah. So, okay, you're back, you're here. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So, yeah, what I was saying when you get sucked into the vortex of Instagram Live was that the whole thing with Find Your Fairy Tale is talking about how to reach for the big things while juggling all of the stuff that life is made of. And so I really have been reaching out to people who I've met who struck me as figuring out ways to do that. Maybe they've mastered it, maybe they're on the way. We talk about the mistakes that we've made along the way and how hard we are on ourselves when we make those mistakes to hopefully keep people from doing the same things, and maybe we can learn from each other a little bit. So 5 books and a lot of different jobs later. Here you are. I mean, you've been everything from a teacher to a barista to a writing coach to an editor. I'm sure I'm missing some things.
Yeah, and I still have, I say I have 4 jobs, but that's 4 plus, the writing of several things at the same time. So it's really been, I don't know. I think it's a work in progress trying to figure out how to balance everything. But I do feel like I have some tricks that I've figured out over time, for sure.
What is one of the major things for somebody who has to, because I think if you're, most of us pursuing the passion becomes balancing a side hustle with the main gig, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you switch from writing, book to book, story to story, and juggling all the other 4 jobs that you're doing?
Okay. All right. Hear me out.
Yes.
What I started out by time blocking. So
Okay.
some people do know that method of like having a calendar and having color codes for different things. So that's how I started was okay, I'm going to look at all the different jobs I have to do, and this is going to be a focus time where I'm going to write, and this will be a time where I can like interact with people, or I'm a teacher, I'm still a teacher.
Yeah.
So this will be my grading time, and I also run the youth program for the writing here locally, and so this will be that time. So I had sort of different things color coded, but then I realized that my basic needs were not being met in the process, and that everything was going by the wayside, and it was just like work all the time. And
Yeah.
I was becoming like a rage machine. Like, I identified that I was just angry and tired all the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, I've been there. I mean, that was kind of the story of my life for a while, because you try to do too much and you get kind of in this speed where
Mm-hmm.
you lose touch with yourself, and no one's taking care of you and you're not taking care of you, and all of a sudden you're in this spiral of like just tornado, and then the creative energy goes away too.
Yeah, and you have a small child, right?
I do. He's 5 now, but he's still little. He's little.
Yeah, that's little. I mean, my kids are teenagers, and I like had to go around the house and be like, okay, everybody, I have to do this thing, and I have, 7 animals in here, and like, um, it's just a lot to juggle. And if you don't prioritize yourself, certainly no one else is going to do it. And not out of malice, but because
They
everybody
don't
has.
know. They don't know either, because if you're kind of plugging and chugging along and acting like everything is fine, no one knows that you're, falling apart on the inside trying to juggle everything. So you say you learned to block off time. What were some of the warning signs that told you you needed to do that?
Well, first of all, I had to take a teaching job. So I was really lucky really early on, and I got a nice book deal for my first 2 books. And then there was total turnover. The sales weren't what people wanted them to be. and the entire realm, the entire house where I was, the
Yeah.
staffing changed.
Okay.
And so my editor was gone, everyone who had acquired me was gone, and I found myself in this place that I never thought that I was going to be in. And it's not that I thought, oh, I'm going to be a famous author and nothing will, I have had a tremendous amount of trust, sort of, that I will just go where I need to go and end up where I'll need to end up. And I didn't anticipate being broke and a single mom and, you know, having no idea how I was going to move forward. And it was really the biggest low I've ever had in my life. And so I had to take a teaching job, but I also had book contracts
Mm.
and I had other things that I had to focus on in order to continue to progress. And so, and I had to take care of my kids and I had to keep a roof over my head. And so I took this teaching job, and I saw there's another teacher on here. It's so exhausting. It's
Yeah.
so grueling.
Because you're on and you're teaching and you're absorbing their emotional
On.
state and you're trying to keep them engaged. So
Yep.
you're giving all day long. You know, it's not,
It,
in many ways it's very similar to being on the news, where you're sharing information and you're projecting it, and whatever's going on in your head, like, it doesn't matter. You have to be there and be professional and be someone they can rely on.
yeah. And it's really for my first year, because I didn't know how to manage my energy at all whatsoever, I would come home and just like face plant on the couch. I have pictures of myself just lying there, like my kids trying to talk to me and just not even being able to respond. I was so tired.
Oh
That
my gosh, I have a word for it. I call it T4, too tired to talk. And it's what I would come home and I would do the same thing. Like, I would just burn the candle at both ends at work. And, you know, I'd come,
yeah,
and people would say, how come you can't pick up the phone? And this was before I had, you know, family and everything where you have to show up, you know. They're like, how come you can't talk, but you can text? And I'd be like, because I have no words. T4. And if
yeah.
it was a really bad day, it was TF4, and you can fill in the blanks.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I really definitely feel like there's been this, it was almost being in that state where nothing was going right and everything was hard, that taught me exactly what I'm capable of, and that I am capable of reaching really deep inside myself and finding things. And so I got it in my head that I was going to, um, I wanted to write picture books. I really wanted to work for Disney. I don't know why I got that in my head, but I really wanted to do that. I had been dying to work with my editor at St. Martin's or Wednesday Books, Sarah.
Yeah.
And it had been like a dream of mine when I first became an author, and I was a huge fan of Rainbow Rowell, and
Mm-hmm.
then I, you know, saw that was her editor, and so I wanted to work with her. And it just, and then all of the things happened. And so that's how I wound up with all these different book deals and all of these different jobs. I went for everything full throttle and like just threw myself into it as hard as I could, and was waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, writing, going to school, doing that. And then, of course, coming home and collapsing at the end of the day. And that was not functional. I was not taking care of myself in any way. I was not exercising. And there's the added thing when you're a teacher, of course, of like, kids are so they're real. This book is like an abstract thing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
something that is in your mind, but you've got these real people who having real problems and need your help right then. So there's also this kind of adrenaline piece, which I'm sure with news anchoring is the same thing, where you have this sense of like things being very urgent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to learn, because I'm a perfectionist, kind of, I mean, obviously not in the realm of lighting, but because, I'm a perfectionist in terms of the work that I want to put out in the world, and I'm never happy with anything. I had to find a way to think of writing as like where I got to play and take care of myself.
That's
Yeah,
how I treat it too. It's people will say, "How do you find time to write?" And I'm like, "No, that's my downtime." Like
yeah.
that's instead of watching a movie or reading a book, I go and I write one. And from learning a little bit about you when I met you, and then reading more about you now, it sounds like your childhood sort of built you to be that way, as did mine. You know, I grew up in 10 acres of woods, and I didn't have a neighborhood, and I had very protective parents who didn't let me stay out late at night. So even as I went into high school, you know, I had my imagination to keep me company. And it started off, you know, once upon a time with princesses and dragons, and then it became time travel, and then it became sci-fi, and who knows what it, but I do you feel like you were always set up to be a writer in terms of, you know, your happily ever after, you were always making up stories. Did you think you'd be a writer long term? Was that the dream?
Well, I thought about this, of course, because I knew you were going to ask me about that, and I watched some of your interviews, and most people do say that it's something they wanted from a very young age. I think I'm a little bit unusual in that way, because I didn't really make a decision about what I wanted to do until I was 35. So it was later for me. I did write stories when I was like 6. I had these little notebooks. We had just moved to the United States. Before that, I lived in England and France. And so I would write these stories in the VW bus. Like, that's one of my first memories. I really remember wanting to escape my own situation and writing these stories where literally nothing happened. It was just a mom and a dad and a dog and a cat, and there was like a fence, and like people got along, and there were no problems, and there were no adventures, and they
You
just
were
like
world building, but you were world building.
was
I mean, my first books were all just copies of whatever I had just read. Like I read, you know, C.S. Lewis Narnia, where it's winter, it's always winter and never Christmas. So I went and wrote a book about a mean red witch in a desert where it was always hot. And, you know, I just took whatever I had just read and kind of
well,
plugged my
and you
own
know,
people
I
into it.
just watched. I just bought actually Maggie Stiefvater's writing thing, because it was like
Hmm.
$25, and I love her. I think
Me
she's amazing.
too.
So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna watch her thing, and maybe I'll get some inspiration as I'm working. And she said to do that. She was like, ideas are a dime a dozen. Just
Hmm.
write your ideas and take the things that you love from books. You don't want to rely on those as sources. And you don't want to be derivative, but there's a difference between that and going, okay, what do I love about everything? What
Hmm.
do I love about all of these stories, and how can I take them and make them my own and make them original? So, I mean, she would say that you were doing what you're supposed to do there, like, you know, pulling
Yeah.
things that resonated with you.
You know what? Dominique, my co-author for my next book, who you met in Chattanooga too,
Yeah.
she just signed on, and she will know the answer to this, because I was like, I can't remember who it was, but on that exact note of writing for the things that make you happy, we saw a really incredible speaker at RWA, the Romantic Writers Association, who said, write for your id. And basically take things that you love and just write for them. And she said, for example, you know, she's like, I love twins, and I love, you know, storms. And she was just saying, like, even if it seems cliche or it seems like it's been done before, throw it in there, because you're going to take your perspective and layer it in, and you're going to love it so much the readers will love it that much. So
Yeah.
write for your id. And Dom, I don't know if you remember who that author was, but she was another, you know, exploding out of the brain kind of person, where she had like, yeah, there we go, Jennifer L. Barnes. I'm pretty sure that's her name. She had
Oh,
like
I was
two
saying not my
PhDs and had,
Jennifer.
you know, published a bazillion books. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, write for your id. And I think that that's a big takeaway from what you're saying is you turned you turned what was part of a job that could be taxing into something that became your joy, your fuel, how you regenerated to then give all day as a teacher.
Yeah. Yep. I think that was basically my coping mechanism, and knowing that I was not willing to give up writing.
Right.
To be I like, I could see being a writer and not a teacher. I cannot see being a teacher and not a writer.
You said you
For
didn't always want to, though. How did it become such a lifeblood for you? You said you didn't really know that that was what you wanted to do until your 30s. What made you want to write your first book?
Well, I didn't have a story, and that was always the problem. Like, I tried writing multiple times. I always ended up writing about some guy I was dating, or about some like thing, that was happening with my family. I mean, none of it was really a story, and I found it very restrictive. So I would write and write and write and write, but then I was restricted by the truth, right?
Yeah. Oh no, I totally get what you mean because
We
we
can have a
find our
very
inspiration. We get our inspiration from the people we know and the things that we do. And it really is hard to separate. I'm struggling right now with even using India and my experience growing up, and visiting India and trying to use that because it's such a part of who I am. I want to write these colorful stories from there. And then I'm like, wait, but that's not how it really happened. And that's not what, but I know it's not autobiographical, it's not a memoir, but it's so hard to extricate the story from the experience that you had.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, when people ask, this is, I know that when my friends first read This Raging Light, they were like, oh, well, we know that, we know that, we know that. Like, they can read the parts of me that are
In there.
in there. But I kept saying, like, yes, there are aspects. Of course, there are aspects. Every character is me, though. That's the
Right.
truth of it. All little parts of your psyche that are in the story. And so I don't know, like, I think the less autobiographical it is, actually, the freer you are. Um, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
and you can
My,
you can give them your thoughts, you can give them your observations, but of course, they're all your characters are going to see the world in ways that you see it. It's coming from
yes,
you. Yeah.
yes, you. And
Yeah.
that's the thing, is that, you know, I just like to be free of my own world. And I've inched closer and closer to writing about Taos, but I had stayed away from it for a long time because this is an I live in Taos, New Mexico, and
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
complex social situation here because you've got Native Americans and you've got the Hispanic culture, and you have to be careful of appropriation, and you have to be careful of perspective, and
Yeah.
you have to not, I don't know, it just boggles my mind, and I would just rather not. you know I
Right,
would
but
just
then there's
rather.
probably stories unfolding in front of you every day where you're like, I want to tell that story, but how do I do it in the right way? And that's a huge discussion, and everything from politics to film to music to every art form really is how do you tell a story without acting like it's your story, without
Yes.
also, clamping down or cramping anybody's voice. Everybody should be allowed to tell the story they want. Everybody. But
Yeah.
it has to be done with grace and respect and a ton of research.
Yeah, and I think you have to ask yourself, why are you telling this story?
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's something that is genuinely yours, you will know it. And I've said this before, but it's something I think about a lot because it comes up for me that my grandmother is biracial, she passed away. And for a long time, I wanted to tell the story of her leaving Martinique and going to France during World War II, and passing as white.
Yeah.
And it's been a thing that my dad has dealt with, and these other things. And at a certain point, I just realized I can't tell that story. I have no idea what it was like to be her. I know what it was like to be her granddaughter. And I
Mm-hmm.
know how amazing that is, but I also know that's not a story that I'm going to be able to tell. Somebody else could do a better job of that. And so I think it's also just like making decisions about what you're going to write about based on what is really true to you.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good
you know,
point. And I think that's the light that's being shined on the industry right now
yeah,
is if you can answer, I think that's a great way to look at it. If you can answer why do I personally want to tell this story and you can answer it in such a strong way, go for it. But if
yeah,
you then have to take that step back and say, "Oh, it just meant a lot to me, but it might not be my story to tell."
yeah. Yeah.
then, and it's hard because we're emotional people, right? We fall in love with each other's stories and we want to
And
tell everybody's stories.
yeah, and it's sort of an ultimate homage to somebody to tell it,
Hmm.
try to tell their life story. But anyway, so to go back, I when my son was born, I was very much looking for, I was consumed when my daughter was born, and then I wanted to have another baby, and I was at home, and I was like, you know, uh, all about having kids. And at that point, I actually thought, okay, that's my life. I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm going to get really amazing at cooking. I mean, I was so bad at it. I'm so bad at it. Like messy. I can't deal with certain like mom things anyway. So I was searching for something that I wanted to do, and the whole time I was writing just in my little piecemeal way. And that was when all of a sudden it just like I had a dream. And I've been on the other end of a slush pile. People, do not say that. Do not put that in your query letter. Do not say you had a dream. I know so many of us get our impulses and our ideas from our dreams, but it sounds so hokey when you put it in a query letter. But anyway, but every time I see that, I'm like, oh, yeah, I definitely did that, where I was like, I've had a dream and now I have this amazing story. And it was about Digby, who ends up being the romantic interest in my first book. And once I had that, I remember the next day I got up and I went to the gym, and the whole time I was in my class, it was like the story was downloading. And I just kept getting more and more and more and more ideas. And it was like, that was it. I've never gone back since then. It was like I had to write
Yeah.
every day. I was so exhausted. My son was a baby. He had acid reflux. There was my daughter had really bad asthma. We had all this stuff
Yeah.
going on. And I would just write during his naps. And before long, I had a draft, and that's what I got into VCFA with. And that's really when everything changed, because I met everybody who would be my mentors. And but really, actually, that's not true, because as soon as I started writing, a really good friend of mine at the time, I was living in New Jersey, and she said, my sister's a writer. You
Yeah.
should meet her. And I was like, oh, cool. Well, I think I'm writing young adult. And she was like, oh, that's what my sister writes. And I don't know if you know who Laura Ruby is, but that was her sister. She won the Prince a few years ago, and she's incredible. She wrote Bone Gap. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar
I
with
have
the book.
not read it. I have not read it. It totally rings a bell. The crazy thing, and the crazy thing about trying to write and trying to work is then trying to read in between.
I know.
You get this list, like the to read list just keeps growing and growing. But you found a wonderful writing friend who was established and could probably tell
Well, if
you a
she
thing or
was,
two about what to do.
yeah, like if I had had any idea of her stature, I probably would have freaked out. But I had no idea. I was like, took my daughter to a play date at my friend's house, and she was there, and she sat down with me, and she was like, X, Y, and Z. Join SCBWI. This is what you need to do. Send me your query letter. Send me your manuscript. Da, 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 da. And it was sort of the beginning of me starting to take the steps to actually get into the professional zone.
So it's interesting because you said that you learned to compartmentalize, all the things that you have to do to survive. But
Mm-hmm.
you also said that you went like go, 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 full throttle. So at this point in your life, are you going full throttle in these different sort of zones in your life? Or are you still, burning the candle, scaling back, exploding the fireworks, scaling back?
Well, having small children, as you know, is so all time consuming and all consuming internally as well. But I used his nap times
Mm-hmm.
religious as the time that I wrote. So I knew he was a baby, so he had two nap times that were about an hour and a half each. And I wrote during that time, they say to sleep when your baby is sleeping. I didn't do
Never
that.
did either. Yeah. I was like, oh, this time is for me.
Yeah, so I just did that, and then it built on itself. But I was a stay-at-home mom, and at the time, my ex-husband, my husband, as they say, we,
I
um,
haven't heard that. I love that. How have I not heard that before? No. Mm-mm.
he he was made great money and I didn't have to work, and I was incredibly privileged in that space. And so actually it's been kind of a wild transition, you know, to I mean, I did not come from much, but I was very lucky to be able to stay home with my kids. I wanted that. I think if you
Yeah.
want to work, it's fabulous. I didn't want to. I wanted to be home with my kids because I didn't have that experience with my own mother. I wanted to like be present for them and them alone. And so I was able to transition pretty gracefully into writing seriously because of the relationship I was in at the time. And when
Yeah.
that went away, and and I sort of was finding my feet, it was very difficult. That was, you know, I've had many years of stumbling, and I recognize that I'm so lucky with the book deals that I've gotten and the way that my career has gone, but it's also been incredibly difficult. So,
There's no glamour. And even the people who seem like they have these sparkly careers have been working behind the scenes or for years that you've never seen. It's all hard work. There's really, sure, there's some luck and timing involved in the things that really sort of hit the lottery in terms of, oh my gosh, the movie deal, the big whatever. But all in all, that person who got that big fancy deal has been working hard for that too, you know? But what would you say to somebody who is right now,
well,
like,
very,
like,
very, sorry, go ahead.
what was that? No, go for it. Go for it.
Oh, I was just going to say there's something about having a really big deal that is also scary, because then there's a high expectation. And if you don't meet that expectation, then you're in this whole other situation, you know? So it's not, I'm not to be a
Yeah.
downer, but like,
No, it's actually, I mean, it's something that for anybody who's watching now who is thinking about, trying to write or is going through the process and wants to know more, you think, oh my gosh, I want the giant deal. Well, if you don't earn out that advance, you essentially have failed. And you don't want to go into your next book with the publishing industry knowing how little you made from the advance. You never have to give your advance back,
no.
but you didn't earn it out. So in many ways, if you're a new author, you want a little less because then you might come closer to meeting it, making it, and hopefully even exceeding it.
Yep. And they do, you know, you have this track record that kind of follows you around, and, you know, you have to keep hoping that you're going to blast through that, and, you know, everything, like, you will have been worthy of that leap of faith on their part.
Right.
And so there is a pressure, and I don't think she'll mind me mentioning, but Jasmine, who was also at that book
Yeah.
festival, that's Jasmine Warga, who's like had a huge success actually since then, which is great. She won the Newbery last year. She said that we need to reevaluate the way that we define success within the
Mm-hmm.
publishing industry. And I think that includes personally, because I don't know any authors who feel like they're a success. And I know a lot of award-winning authors. And I just
Yeah,
think,
there's like that crazy, if you're not a New York Times bestseller for so many weeks and you get that crazy $19 million movie deal right out of, off of your first book that you ever wrote. That's like the same thing as saying you're going to be, you know, the NBA Hall of Famer or the Golden Globe Oscar winning. I mean, there's certain things that happen in society, but you can have so much success without that sparkly, huge, you know, giant award. That's like, or the
but also,
millions of
I think
of dollars that you
it's
make.
a moving target. You know, it's part of the human condition to keep desiring and wanting and desiring and wanting. And I think some awareness of that is in order for people who are in, you know, in the business of being creative, literally in that business, that you have to develop some way of feeling your own success that isn't dependent on external validation. and that you don't say, okay, I want to be, because right now for me, it's New York Times bestseller. I want to be on the New York Times best, you know, I'm sure you do
Right.
too.
Of
Like
course.
but that can't be the measure of success. It can't be. And then
No,
once it
because
is,
then so many people aren't, you know, and then are they not successful? Of course not. Of course they're successful, you know, in different ways. So what would you say are some of the things that we can use as a bar for success that's a little more reasonable? I mean, it's fine. Let's say, hey, let's manifest. I want to be a New York Times bestseller. That's fine.
yeah,
But, you
sure.
know, how do you then not punish yourself and take the time to sort of celebrate what you have achieved?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out.
Me too. That's why I keep getting people on this series, and I'm hoping that they're going to tell me.
Well, can I share what we both said in the chat about
Yeah.
our, yeah, I was like, she said, what should
Oops.
I read of yours? And I was
Hold
like,
on, hold
I
on.
don't
Your
know.
your audio is cutting out a little bit for me. I don't know if
I
other
just want
people
to
can
make
hear
a
you.
bonfire out of all of my books. And then
Say it one more time.
no, they're the greatest. Oh, oh,
Can you hear me?
oh, I just said we were talking about the fact that for us, our, you know, I have to get my charger. I think my phone is
We're
dying.
going for a walk. That's fine. Yeah, we
I
were
had
losing the
all of
audio.
it.
So now
Can you guys?
we get the grand tour. And I actually, truthfully, I've been worried about your arm because I think that you've been holding up the phone this whole time. And the last time I had a guest do that, um, they were like, note to self, next time I do this, I'm going to, you know, lean my phone up on something because their arm hurt the next morning. So I hear you now. I think maybe it was just blipping out for a minute.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know.
But
My situation
no, you're
is,
good.
you
I
know,
hear you now.
homegrown.
Yep,
Okay, good.
that's the best kind there is. That's what, you know, this is not the news. This is hanging out on Instagram. That's just how we
All
do it.
right.
But yeah, we were going back and forth on chatting, you know, just kind of catching up ahead of doing this with everybody. And you said that you wanted to share some of the stuff that we were saying.
Oh, yeah. So what I was saying was that both of us, you know, you said, what should I read of yours? And I said, I don't know. I just want to set all of my books on fire. So, you know, at the same, so we then got into a conversation about how you at once, or we at once, think we've written the best thing ever, and then can look at it from another perspective and be so critical. So for
Right.
me, the way that I evaluate my own progress and whether or not I am accomplishing things has very, like, I want to do well enough that I'm allowed to continue doing this and getting paid
Yes.
for it. I'm very
Yes.
clear about that. And I would like to do it in a way that allows me some agency in the process. You don't want to have to go begging for people to publish you. Like, that doesn't feel good. You know, it's nice when people come to you and are like, yes, I love your books. I'm so, like, that's what happened, you know, with Disney. It was like, oh, I love the voice. Let's see what we can do here.
Yeah.
And it was so fun. And so that's one thing. People wanting to work with me or wanting to collaborate with me, that feels really good. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think that that's a really reasonable way to look at it, and I think that you've reduced it down to a feeling, which is so important. Yes, you want to get paid for the work that you do, but
Yeah.
even that goes back to a feeling, because after a while, you know, we write for fun or we do anything for fun, and it has a level of reward, but when you get paid to do it, that feeling of success is that much higher, you know? So it's what makes you feel good, you know? And as long
Yeah.
as what you're doing is making you feel good, that's success.
Yeah, exactly. And feeling, and okay, so the writing community is a huge, I was thinking earlier, I was like, this like sisterhood of kid lit authors is no joke. Like,
Yeah.
and you know, the guys too. But I do think that there's this sort of solidarity of people trying to support each other. It's an incredibly supportive environment. I don't feel like people are ever trying to tear them. Everybody's trying to help each other. And I just think that's so great because it's such a competitive industry, and yet it doesn't. So I think having a sense of the writing community is one way to feel the success, and being able to have very candid conversations, but also understanding that this is a marathon. This is, this is something that takes a long time to accomplish, and that it's worth the effort that we're putting forward.
Yeah, it's so true. Now I'm freezing up. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Well, this connection, the storms are just, I don't know, the Instagram karma is not on our side right now, but that's okay. That's okay, because I think that, in general, the biggest takeaways that I'm getting from you, they're mirrored in your writing. I started Mayhem because that's the book that you were talking about when I first met you. So I figured, why not dive into that one? And it's interesting because you said you started writing and all you did was just write about worlds as a kid, just there. And that you might have thought was nothing at the time, but your worlds are so real and so vivid, probably because that was what you practiced writing from, the day you could in the bus to now. I was immediately like, oh, okay, I'm here. I'm in this world. And your characters, I immediately loved too. And it's so funny. I'm such a sucker for young adult that at first, you start off with an older voice, the mother's voice. And then all of a sudden it switched to the teen's voice. I'm like, now this is my kind of story. I don't know. I love young adult because it's such a hopeful place and it's a formative place. And I think that when we hit all those roads we've been talking about, you go back to that sort of fiery, molten time of life. And that's what reminds you who you are. And that's why I love to write in that space.
You're sort of breaking up, so I got like every fourth word. But now I can see you.
Every fourth word was probably all that mattered. This is my breaking up dance, I guess. This is like, these are my words coming at you.
Can you do some karate chops for me, please?
Yes, karate chops. You like that? One of my favorite producers back in the day, that really was her dance move. That was like her go-to for me. And then another funny thing, guys, so Estelle has she posts these beautiful pictures of her cat. And at one point, one of her cats was laying on her arm while she was typing. And so I said, I wrote underneath, I want a cat sleeve, meaning like a nice fuzzy cat. And all she could picture was me with like little kitty cat tattoos up and down my arm. And it made me laugh so much. I was like, well, that too, but I just meant like a cat hug. So because I'm cutting out now, we'll wrap it up. But Estelle, your thoughts are absolutely vivid and amazing and interesting and honest. And if people can hear you, I always have to ask, what's your favorite fairy tale?
Favorite fairy tale? I'm sorry, I just have to go with the one that I've watched 100 times when I was little, which was Sleeping Beauty. Yeah. And it wasn't because of the prince, and it wasn't because of her. It was because of Maleficent.
Yes, I knew you were going to say that.
I'm so happy that I've gotten to write City of Villains because I get to use her as a character. It's just been so wonderful.
City of Villains, guys, if you're not familiar with it, is just a really cool concept that Disney's doing where they're telling stories of fairy tales, how appropriate, but from a completely different perspective. It's, the backstories of the villains, the imagined plot lines of the main characters that you never thought you knew. It's very cool.
Yeah, I think the first book comes out January 26th. So I am so hopeful for these books. I think they're so much fun. And it's
even the title, come on, City of Villains, like, yeah.
I know, and it's like, it's Maleficent and Ursula and Captain Hook as like edgy teenagers. I just had the most fun building that world. And
yeah, it makes me think, Disney has the show, The Descendants, and it's, that is really, I may or may not watch it. No, that's a fun one too. So when we get to reimagine the stories that you think you knew and put our own take on it, that's just so much fun. So if you had to put everything kind of into one sentence to find your fairy tale, we talked a lot about compartmentalizing and focusing on one thing and not burning out and finding your community, but could you Could you make it be a sentence, or is it all too much?
No, I think I could distill it into one thing, which would be trust. I think that you have to have a lot of trust to find your fairy tale, and whether you're spiritual or not or whatever, there's a certain amount of trust in that you have to have in being a human, and going through this process and being an artist. You have to trust that you will wind up exactly where you're supposed to go, and you will have your version of a happy ending, whether it's probably cooler than what you're imagining, and it's probably a lot more complex. So yeah, you have to have some gumption and push through discomfort, and it's very rocky sometimes, but I think if you trust, sometimes I look up and I'm like, I have these two kids. I'm very happily married. I have 7 pets. I have my teaching job where I get to see all these incredible kids every day. And, they're seeing me through this isolated moment. And I have all these book deals. I'm just completely lucky. And when I come from there, I'm like, what is all this other crap I think I want? I just need to keep going into my imagination, taking care of my writer friends, and
Yeah.
being as good a person as I can. And that's it.
And trust in the outcome. I love that. You know what?
Yeah.
No one has boiled it down to one word. We've gotten one sentence, but I fully wrap my head and my heart around that word trust, and I'm going to hold on to that. And I know a lot of the people who are watching tonight will too. So Estelle, thank you so much for making the
Thank
time.
you.
And
Yeah,
I can't wait.
Can I just say one more thing? I know
Yeah. You can say a million more things because our video's back now.
No, I want to say that you meet people sometimes where you're just like, that is an incredible person. And I think that we express this to each other, but back, behind the scenes. But I just had instant adoration for you, and you are just so fabulous. And I really, really thank you for having me here, because I was like, I want to do that. And then you asked me, and I was so excited. So,
oh my gosh, no doubt. I mean, we met on this suspense and mystery panel, and I was intrigued by the concept of mayhem, and I just loved how busy you were. And I love people who go and get it. But I'm so glad it's mutual, because that's even better.
Yep, you're fabulous. I love seeing you on social media. So thank you.
I hope I see you in real life soon.
That would be great. All right.
Love you, ladies. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Good night.
Good night.